Well, what is up, Neon Life Church? How y'all doing this morning? Anybody excited to be here? Well, hey, most of y'all know who I am, but for y'all that don't, my name is Shelby. I'm the student pastor here at Neon Life, and I'm getting the opportunity to speak this morning. For all of y'all joining us online, we're so glad to see y'all, or that you are joining us today. This morning, we are in our second week of our series called Summer at Neon Life Church. It's another great series I love doing. Really, it's just a bunch of standalone messages that get us through the summer. But this is an exciting time. How many of y'all are enjoying the weather? A few of y'all? I'm not, I'll be honest. I really enjoy the cooler weather. I would say I like winter, but after this last February, I'm not sure I'll ever really truly like winter again. I've always thought I really liked snow until February. But we are now in the summer, and I can definitely tell it. The humidity is high, the heat is out there. I'm insulated, I don't need any more heat. But it's still here, and I get to be out in it, so maybe I'll shed a few pounds. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But we are now in summer here at Neon Life. This morning, I want to start out my message by really reminding you of something. And this is something that I remind my students of week after week. So the students are like, okay, yeah, I know where you're going with this. But I want to remind y'all this morning that we've each been given a story. We've each been given a purpose. We've each been given a journey. We've each been given a promise. And this morning, to start this message out, I really want to remind each and every one of you that you do have a purpose. That God has given you a promise, He's given you a purpose, and He's given you a plan. Really, overall, we have the same promise, and we have the same purpose. And that purpose is to go out and to share the gospel, to spread the good news of who Jesus is. But at the same time, God has given each of us a different purpose and how we do that. We've each been given a story. We've all lived different scenarios. We've all had different behavioral things that have happened from our past. We were all raised differently. We all have different journeys. But through that, God has allowed us to bring people to His promise and the promise He's given you. And so I was thinking about it earlier this morning. Here at Neon Life Church, we have over 100 people on the serve team. Many of you are probably on the serve team. Many of you are on the serve team. But you see some people are out in the parking lot. Some people are at the front door and they open the door and welcome you as you come in. Some people, they do the hospitality, set out the flowers, provide the food for the serve team. And some of you might be in the back of the kids. My point in saying all of these is not all of us enjoy to be out in the parking lot with a sign going, hey, let me get an umbrella and bring you to the front door. That's not what all of us do. Some of you prefer to be in the kids. And there's some of us that, for me personally, I don't do good with the toddlers. I don't think I'd be able to do that. It's just not my thing, but some of y'all love doing it. My point in bringing all this in is saying that we have different stories and we have different purposes, but through all of us using the purpose and the promise that God has given us, His kingdom has succeeded. His kingdom is grown. His kingdom can go further through each of us using the purpose that we have. And so what I've noticed, though, is the sad truth is that a lot of times we don't ever reach our purpose. There's a lot of times people don't ever reach that fulfillment and that promise of that purpose that God has given them. We begin to go into this journey called life, and we go through the journey to get to the promise. And then all of a sudden we don't really hit it because we begin to experience these doubts and we begin to experience these pains and we begin to experience all these situations that get in front of us before we get to that purpose. But it doesn't change that God has a purpose and He has a plan. There's a sad statistic out that about 85% of people die and never forgot what their purpose was. It's a really sad truth to know that 85% of people never experience that fulfillment that God called them to have because they never truly find that purpose. What I believe happens is we get stuck and the journey getting us there, and it brings us back. I want to start out in Isaiah chapter 46. It's verse 10 through 11. It says, I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. I say my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. From the east I summon a bird of prey. From a far off land, a man to fulfill my purpose. What I've said that I will bring about, what I've planned that I will do. So if y'all have heard me speak before, y'all know that I'm really mesmerized by creation. I love to see the creation that God has around us. I work in Millsap full time, and as I'm driving down 20 into Millsap, there comes a point on the highway where really all you see above the horizon of the road is the sky. And it always amazes me because you see this big open sky and it's got the clouds and it's got the color. But what's amazing is it's not the same picture every morning. When I drive on Monday morning, I'll see one picture. And I'll see this picture God painted for us in the sky. But when I drive Tuesday morning, I'm not going to see the same clouds in the same place because God has created a new picture for me that next morning. But then I look around and I see the trees. And I see the water and I see the grass and all these things. And each of those things have a purpose. The trees give off oxygen. We have to drink water to survive. Everything that we have around us has a purpose. And what's crazy to me is you see in this, it says God created in the beginning. He was there in the beginning, but it says he's also there in the end. And it's something that our mind can't truly fathom is a beginning to the end. Like we know what a beginning and end is. But so when you really think about it, the earth has been around for thousands of years. And the other day I was thinking, I was like, how is God not bored already? Like he's been making this creation for thousands of years. And he's making people for thousands of years. And here's the truth is we're crazy. But he still keeps making us. And I'm like, God, what are you doing? Like, I'd already be done with the project. I'm one of those people, like, I get bored real quick. I'm like, okay, I've done it for about an hour. I'm done, But God keeps going. And it's because God wants to continue to show us purpose. He wants to continue to show us creation. And it says that he is there in the end. Like, the end's already been written out. We can see it in Revelation. He already created the end. And have you ever really thought about eternity? I remember as a kid, I would sit there and I'd be like, man, one day I'm going to die. That sounds really morbid, just at that. One day I'm going to die and I'm going to enter into eternity. And I would begin to think about eternity with Jesus. And it would overwhelm me. Like, it would crush me. Like, I'm like, I don't like this feeling. Because I can't comprehend and grasp the idea of an eternity with Jesus. But what's amazing about it is we as his children, he's given us that promise. He's given us that promise that we're going to reach that other side. If you look in Psalm 139 and you get to verse 16 through 18, it says, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. So I find it amazing because God's created all these things, right? But it says he created us so complex. And it says he knew the days of our lives before we even breathed our first breath. That he already had the days for each of you, every one of you in here. He had them ordained before you were even born. He's given you a purpose. You're still breathing today. He's still giving you that purpose. We're not going to go back to the last verse on the screen, but when you look at it, it says, what I have planned, that I will do. So if he's planned it for your life, he's going to do it. Now, I shared this in first service. Have any of you ever been to a beach? A few of y'all? Do y'all like to go to the beach? Okay, so you go to the beach or you go anywhere with sand, really, and it's enjoyable at the moment. Like, you like to go to the beach, it's fun. But when you leave the beach, it's not so fun anymore. And you kind of regret it a little bit because then you are finding sand for months. It's like all the sand comes with you and you just see it in everything. And I hate that feeling. I used to play sand volleyball in college. Not like at a level. It was just something fun we did. And I played sand volleyball, and it was fun until I got back to my dorm and I had to take a shower, and I still could not get it all off of me and out of my swimsuit and all these things. I'm like, it just doesn't work. Now here's the thing. You look at the sand, and you don't ever go to the sand and go, man, that's a really fine piece of sand. But when you look at that one grain of sand and you look around you, there ain't no way you're going to try to count it. It's impossible. It says God's thoughts for you outnumber the amount of the grains of sand on the earth. That is a lot of thoughts. That is a lot of thoughts that God thinks for you. He loves us that much to give us a purpose, to give us a plan, that his thoughts outnumber the grains of sand that are on the earth. So I've shared these two things. It says he's going to do what he says he's going to do. He's planned it out so it's going to happen. And then I've shared with you how he says we're a great creation. Like he's numbered our days. He's ordained us to do all these great things. He's even outthought us. Like thoughts that we can't even think of towards us out of love. But going back to the statistic earlier, so many of us never reach the end of that promise and purpose that God gave us. I have 2 stories for you today. It's going to be kind of long, so bear with me. But I want to share with you some stories, and I feel like this really relates to how we are today. That we really do the same thing that's happening in these stories. But last week, Pastor Eric, he preached on Moses. And I laugh a little bit because I wasn't originally going to tell you this, but it's funny to me. Is I get off stage, and I'm walking by, getting ready to come in here, and all of a sudden I hear Eric say, all right, so we're going to turn to Exodus chapter 3. And I'm like, like, back to the writing board, you know? So I was getting ready to preach on Moses this week. But then I realized really what Pastor Eric was preaching, what I'm preaching this morning, really builds off of that. And so I want you to really listen to this. But he shared how Moses went to the burning bush. And God had told him, I've heard the oppression and I've heard the cries of my people, the Israelites. I'm going to use you to get them out of slavery. In which we saw Moses come up with the excuses as to why he couldn't do it. Well, you fast forward, they get out of slavery. They cross the Red Sea. They are now headed to the promised land. They were in the wilderness, headed to the promised land for 40 years, going in circles. What's crazy is many scholars say that had they just gone, they could have been there in really a couple months. But they spent 40 years going in the circle in the wilderness. And I believe that's where many of us get stuck today as we get into that wilderness, headed on the journey to the promise, and we just keep doing this. And we spend that 40 years in the wilderness. So they go, and finally they get to the promise, or they get on the other side of the promised land. They're almost about to enter in. And God tells Moses, he said, hey, send some people across to scout out the land. Basically what he's saying is go look at what I'm about to give you. Go look at this land that I've promised you. Go send some people to scout out the land. So you get into Numbers chapter 13 and verse 26. And it says, they came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. There they reported to them and to the fruit. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev, the Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak, come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. So it says they go in, and there's literally giants. What's crazy about this is they go in and they come back like, look, like, oh my gosh, Moses, like the land is so fertile. Like, it's got the best fruit we've ever seen. It's an amazing place, but we can't get it because it's fortified. The people there are big. There's no way we can win this battle. There's no way we can do this. Here's what I find interesting about the story. God didn't say, go in and scout the land and figure out how you're going to defeat them. He just said, go scout out the land to see what I've promised you. I believe God wanted them to see what his promise was, but they were so intimidated by what would happen when they got there. They were so intimidated about what stood in between them and the promise that they said, look, there's no way we can do this. You go on and you get into chapter 14. To give you a preface of this, you see all through the wilderness that the Israelites had complained. They're like, it'd have been better for us to die in Egypt than to be out here. Like, God has given them all these things, and he's given them a promise, and yet they'd rather go back to the slavery. And I wonder how many times we get on this journey to go where God has called us, and we decide that it'd be better to go back to where we were because we don't think we can make the journey. I want to share this, that God isn't a God of comfort. What I mean by that, he gives you peace and he gives you comfort, but he's really notorious for taking you out of your comfort zone to get you to where he's called you to be. So they complained and they're upset and they're complaining. And they complained so much that finally God's like, I'm done with them. Like, he's just ready to destroy them. He's done. And Moses replies to God, he's like, but God, if you do this, the Egyptians are going to see it and this isn't going to look good on you. Can you just forgive them? So now you get into chapter 14, verse 20 through 23, and it says, the Lord replied, I have forgiven them as you asked. Nevertheless, as surely as I live and as surely as the glory of the Lord fills the whole earth, not one of those who saw my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, but who disobeyed me and tested me 10 times, not one of them will ever see the land I promised on oath to their ancestors. No one who has treated me with contempt will ever see it. Right at this verse, we hit a sad truth and a sad moment. You had 600,000 Israelites freed from Egyptian slavery. They are now headed to a promised land that's flowing with milk and honey, has the biggest fruit they've ever seen. This is the most fertile soil they've ever seen. And because they were too busy trying to figure it out on their own, thinking they knew better than God, because they were too busy complaining, and because they saw what was ahead of them, and they didn't think that they could beat that battle, they never made it to the promised land. Did you know out of 600,000 people, only 2 people from them made it to the promised land? And that was Caleb and Joshua. And if you notice in the verse before, Caleb was one of the ones that said, look, we can take this on because we have God going before us. The sad truth is many of us get stuck right at that point. We're so close to the promised land. We're just about to cross over. And we see the battles that we have to face, and quickly we turn back and go, look, I can't do this. I don't want to see us to continue to be stuck in that stage. I don't want any of us to be stuck in the journey when we could be experiencing the promise. If you go into Psalm 23, it says, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So many of us know Psalm 23. In fact, a lot of people quote it. But I wonder how much we believe it. Because so often as we go through that journey, we forget the very things that it says in this verse. That he gives us rest. That he leads us beside still waters, that he lets us lie down in green pastures. I've driven down the road. Have you ever driven down a back road and you see this big green pasture? And there's something about it that's relaxing. For me, I'm like, man, I really want to jump out and just lay in it because it's like the wind's like blowing it. It just looks so soft and cuddly. I'm like, man, I just want to go lay in it. I'm sure it doesn't feel the same as it looks, if I was to guess. But it says he leads us to lie down in green pastures, but it says he leads us beside quiet waters. Now, I'm mesmerized by water. Y'all probably know this. But here's one thing I've noticed. If you go to a hospital, have you ever noticed how a lot of hospitals have a waterfall in it? Or if they don't, they have a fountain outside. You know why? It's because when we get beside quiet waters, there's something about it that relaxes us. There's something about being around that is relaxing. I used to have a 20-gallon fish tank in my bedroom growing up. My favorite thing was when the water started getting a little low and the filter had that little waterfall and it started down into the water, flowing down into the water. The noise of it was so relaxing. I'd turn the light on and I would just watch all the colorful fish until I fell asleep. But it was the sound of it that really just brought me at peace. It says he leads you beside the quiet waters. What I want to do this morning is really build off of those points. Which brings me to the first point is we have to rest in his peace. Now, I want to be honest with y'all this morning. I think I just really got out of the worst week I've probably had in my life. And I was going through and just from the very beginning of the week, me and Steph were just really being attacked in many ways. I think it's probably the worst financial week we've ever had, probably the worst week emotionally we've ever had. And throughout the whole week, there were many days we weren't sure how we were going to make it to the next day. And I'm sitting there and I'm honestly going, God, I don't get it. I'm trying to be so faithful to you. I'm trying to do all these things for you. And here I am at the lowest moment of my life, I feel like. I mean, it was so bad. Just to share a little story. I was getting Caden's bottles ready in the morning to go to daycare. And a little bit of orange juice had fallen over and landed right here on my back. And I'm already on edge. It's been a bad week. And instantly I just go, wow. And I tossed the dishes across the whole counter. Of course, Steph's like, what's going on? I was at that moment where I felt like there was no hope. I was at that moment where I felt like life was about to fall apart. And for the first time, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. We hit Friday. And we had to take our son Caden in for a procedure. He's 8 months old. And they had to put him under anesthesia to do the procedure. And so we're already kind of nervous, honestly. Not crazy about anesthesia, period, but especially with the 8-month-old. And so we get him in there, and he's been real congested. And the anesthesiologist comes in, or first the doctor comes in, does the pre-op, and then the anesthesiologist comes in, and we have to sign consents. And the anesthesiologist was real concerned because Caden stays really congested. For y'all that work in the nursery, y'all probably hear him, but he stays really congested. And the anesthesiologist had a little bit of worry going, how does he do with his congestion? Does he breathe okay when he drinks? His formula, all these things. Yeah, he does pretty good. She's like, because man, we're just real nervous about doing the anesthesia. Of course, at this point, I'm like, I don't really want to have to reschedule again for this procedure. And she said, but if it's always just up here, we're going to go ahead and do it. I feel like we feel confident we can do it. So you feel good there's confidence, but at the same time, you're kind of like, okay. So they come in, they bring him back, they take him back, and they set us up on a texting system. So they give us every step of the way. Hey, he's going under anesthesia. All right, he's good now. He's in the procedure. Now the procedure's done. So we get a text, procedure has started. So now you're kind of just sitting there and you're waiting and you're trying to stay distracted. And Cooks had some kind of clowns in the kids' hallway called Dr. P-Brain. And they came to our room with Caden not in the room. And they start doing the jokes with us. And I'm going, just no. It's weird. One of them, this is a complete side note, has nothing to do with my message, but one of them comes in, he's I was wearing the new Serve Team shirt that has the Hebrew, and he asked what it said, so I told him, and all of a sudden he has a patch that has all these different languages on it, and he's making jokes about how you should say he's created for this, and then the other one pulls out a little pig, little toy pig, and they start debating on how to say pig in Spanish. And I'm looking at Steph save us, please. Just tell them what it is and let's go with this. All of a sudden he's like, yeah, and my pig is also a phone. Hello? And I'm like, okay, dude, you gotta, like, there's kids across the hall. Like, I'm good, you know? And I'm not being rude about it, but I'm just like, this is weird. Like, this is really weird. There's no kids in here. I think they were just trying to keep me distracted. But he gets in the procedure, and about 20 minutes later, they said it's probably going to take about an hour total. 20 minutes later, they said, hey, the procedure's done. He's doing great. And me and Steph are like, yes. And we start texting all the people that know, hey, guess what, guys? He's great. We're good. Well, recovery is only supposed to take like 30 minutes to an hour, they said. And he'd be in another room, and then after that, they'd bring him in. An hour and a half, 2 hours passes by, and we've yet to see our son. And we're just kind of sitting there going, okay, what's happening? We get a text, we need you to be in your room, the physician wants to talk to you. I'm like, great. So the physician comes in, or it's the anesthesiologist, she goes, hey, so he did good in the surgery, but as we got him into the recovery, his lungs started secreting mucus, and we just haven't been able to get it under control. Like if he was a kid, it'd be easier because we could tell him to cough, but he's a baby, so he can't cough. So we're doing CPT. It's some kind of therapy where they hit the chest and it forces it to come up. And they go, we've been trying for about an hour, aren't able to figure it out. We finally just had to take the breathing tube out. And they said, once we took the breathing tube out, he got better. So there's the good news. And he's like, he'll be in the room here shortly. I'm like, great, you know, glad that he's doing better. And they, about 10 minutes later, bring him in the room. So we're like, okay, we're at the tail end of this. We're about to be gone. It's about to be good. And all of a sudden, we're sitting there watching him, and he's on the monitor. They're tracking him. And all of a sudden, his oxygen starts dipping. And so we're sitting there with our 8-month-old watching his oxygen, what seemed like a victorious thing, like, oh, man, we're out, we're good. All of a sudden, we just dip. And we're sitting there going, okay, all right, God, like, let's figure this out. They put him on oxygen, and they put it at 2. I don't know what their measurement is, but 2, whatever it is. And it's keeping it up at about 100. But anytime they would drop it, it would go back down almost to 80. And what was happening was the anesthesia was causing him to hold his breath. And so they're saying, hey, we may have to keep him overnight because the last thing we want is for you to go home and he'll not make it through the night because he stopped breathing. And so what seemed like a very victorious event now turns into really a scary event because we're going, okay, is his oxygen going to fix? Well, basically what had happened is Caden has a high pain tolerance. So when they gave him the anesthesia based on his weight, it was too much for him because it caused him to be over-relaxed. So they had to give him a medication to reverse the narcotic. And once they did that, he was good. I share all this to say this is, it was honestly the roughest week we've ever had. And I'm going, God, I have to preach Sunday. I left Friday night, and I'm like, I still don't have a message. Like, God, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't understand why I'm going through all these things. But for some reason, he put me here, and here's what he said. He said, rest in my peace. I think the one thing me and Steph learned over this last week is we don't have what we want necessarily, but we literally had just enough for every single day along the way, and he provided the needs that we have. My question for you is, as you're on this journey, are you trusting him to provide those needs? It says, rest in his peace. So in Psalm 46, 1-4, it says, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. It says, he's our refuge and our strength in those hard times. I think one thing that the Israelites probably didn't realize was he was their refuge and their strength in the hard time. The only thing that got me through this week is that I had to remember God is my refuge and my strength in this hard time. Because I'm going to tell you, if I didn't have God in that hospital room on Friday, I don't know that I could have done it. I don't know that I could have been prepared for what was to come if I didn't have God going into that hospital room with me. I don't know if I could have been prepared for the week if I didn't trust the fact that God is faithful in everything he does, that he has promises and that he has a plan for me. And had I not relied on that, I wouldn't have made it through the week. I mean, honestly. It says he's your refuge and your strength in the time of trouble. He's not just there in your good times, it's in the times of trouble. In your darkest moment, when you're in the darkest valley, he is the refuge and the strength that gets you through to take that next step. If you also look in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, it says, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Listen, God is in the business of giving you peace. He is in the business of doing miracles in your life. He is in the business of when he gives you a purpose, when he gives you a plan, when he gives you a promise, he's going to get you there. All you have to do is follow him. And that last verse I shared in Psalm 23, it says he prepares the table for you in the presence of your enemies. I think a lot of times we think that God and Satan are on the same level. Like they have to battle each other. And it's not at all like that. Like God is way up here and Satan is way down here. And literally just like this, Satan can be cast into hell. In fact, you see it, he casts him out of heaven just like that. God just tells us to follow him into the battle. He just says to rely on his peace because he's going to win the victory. We already see that. The second thing we have to do is we have to seek refreshment for our souls. You have to seek the refreshment for your soul. You see that in Psalm 23. It says it gives you refreshment. So I want to share the second story tonight or this morning. And it's in John chapter 4, verse 4 through 13. And it says, now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. I want to stop here for a minute. I find it really interesting that it says Jesus was on this journey and he found himself tired. So he sat down at the well. Jesus got tired on a journey, sat down at the well. Jesus knows what it's like to be tired on a journey and need to have rest. And my thing to say this morning is if Jesus got tired and he needed rest, we definitely get tired and we definitely need rest. And we have to allow him to give us that refreshment. It says when the Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is to ask you for a drink, you'd have asked him and he would have given you living water. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock? Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. Listen, we all know what it's like to have to drink water. Anybody here not drink water? Yeah, a few of us. It's like, me, I'm like sweet tea all day. But we have to have water. He says, if you drink water, if I wake up and I drink a whole plastic bottle of water, later on in the day, I'm going to need some more water because I'm going to get thirsty again, right? But it says if you experience my living water, you'll never be thirsty again. Here recently, I shared this analogy with the teens. So I said I like sweet tea, love sweet tea. In fact, if you go to my house, it's almost guaranteed I will have sweet tea at my house. And whoever created cold brew, they're sent from heaven because cold brew is so amazing and so convenient. So I always have sweet tea. Now, when I make sweet tea, I don't just make like, all right, time to go make a little cup of sweet tea. I make a pitcher. Like, we're gonna have sweet tea. Now, if I invite some of y'all over, and I'm like, okay, who wants tea? And I open up the fridge and I get to the pitcher and I only have this much tea in the pitcher. Y'all ain't getting any sweet tea because there ain't enough. And I might be a little selfish. However, if I fill up the pitcher with sweet tea, then y'all get sweet tea. But, not that I would do this because it would dilute the sweet tea, but we'll just use water. If I put the pitcher under the faucet and I turn on the water and I just let it keep going, it's just gonna keep overflowing. Now here's the thing is, when you fill up the pitcher, if it just continues to overflow, there's plenty for everybody else. It's like a gas tank. If you only let God kind of refresh your soul to where he only fills it up this much, it's gonna be empty real quick and you're gonna be real irritable and your life is gonna be real bad real quick. But if you allow him to fill up your pitcher and even overflow it, then as you go through every journey in life, you're gonna be okay because you have his refreshment getting you through the journey. Because he never said life was gonna be easy. He just said, I'll be with you to get you through it. You have to seek that refreshment for your soul. And here's my last point this morning. And sometimes this might be the hardest one, is we have to walk the journey with boldness. We have to walk this journey of life with boldness. Really, if you look at the one thing that kept the Israelites from making it to the promised land, they weren't bold enough to take the battle. They weren't bold enough to cross over. Some of us this morning are literally just one step away from being in the promise, but we're too afraid to take the step. We're too afraid to take that step. In John chapter 16, verse 33, it says, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you may have trouble, or you will have trouble. But take heart, I've overcome the world. He said, look, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have trouble. But guess what? I've overcome the world. So you ain't got nothing to worry about. That battle that's too big for you, guess what? Already beat it. Those giants you were afraid of over there, they look like grasshoppers to me. So he's already won the battle. You just have to go for it. I've already overcome the world. What are you worried about? You know, our enemy is the world. And I shared this with first service. I just told you, like, we always think of Satan and God as like equal competitors, and they're not. We are Satan's competitor. Scripture says there's spiritual warfare all around us. And if the enemy can at all keep you from thinking you can make it to the promise, he's winning the battle. He knows he can't mess with God, but he can mess with the children. But he's overcome the world. The one thing we're afraid of, he's overcome. If you go into Hebrews 13, verse 6, it says, so we say this with confidence. The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? If you really think about the one thing we're all scared of is death. Maybe you're not scared of death. But I don't think people are really scared of being hurt. I think they're scared of dying. I mean, what's the one thing that gets us all to be feel defeated? Death in the family. But you know that even if we die, I mean, really, honestly, if you're a child of God, if you die, I mean, you're at the better end of it anyway. You're now with Jesus in heaven. So the one thing that can take us out really can't take us out because Jesus came and died on the cross and stole the keys of death. We enter into eternity with Jesus when we die. So the one thing that defeats us here on earth, see, here's the truth. Death doesn't defeat God's children. Death defeats the world. It says he's overcome the world. So why are we so afraid to face a battle with boldness? Why are we so afraid to go into the battle with the boldness that he's called us to have? What are we so afraid of at the other side? I mean, have you ever seen God fail you? truly fail you? No? This last week, I wasn't really going to share this, but this last week, I said, me and Steph had the worst financial week we've ever had in our life. It started Monday morning. And I watched our bank account. And I got to look at my son and my wife going, I don't know how I'm going to provide for these two. And just when it seems to got better, Tuesday morning, boom, I see the bank account again. I'm like, whoop, there goes another bill. Had to go back up. And the next day, boom, bank account. And I'm going, God, what is going on right now? Here's why I share this. I said I wasn't planning on sharing this, but I think somebody in here this morning needs to hear this. God didn't fail me this last week. When I had questions of God, where are you at right now? How did this happen? I got to the end of the week going, every one of those bills got paid. And when it came time to eat, I had food. And when I wasn't sure how I was going to have enough gas to get to the next place, all of a sudden I had enough money to get me to the next place in the gas. I've never been at that place before, ever. Like I literally had a coin jar I didn't even know we had. And all right, well, let's see how many quarters I have today. Steph's back there laughing because we hit Friday and she's like, this is so fun. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's really not. I really don't like penny pinching, but okay. She's like, it's just like a journey. You're trying to figure it out like it's a puzzle. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm glad you're positive about it because I'm really not right now. Thank you. I hate every moment of it. But here's the deal. He didn't fail me. He didn't fail me. And when it came time that I felt defeated, and I wondered, how am I gonna feed my 8-month-old son? How am I gonna buy that next can of formula? Just like that. The truth is, I didn't have to ask anybody for help. God made it very clear that I'm providing for you. I didn't ask people. He just said, boom, here it is. God's not gonna fail you. And whatever that journey is that you're on and you're so afraid to hit that promise, just take the step. Just take the step. Because he's not gonna put you on a journey that's gonna cause you to fail. He's not gonna put you on a journey that you can't make it. And at every moment, if you just trust him and go with boldness and you let him refresh your soul and you let him give you that peace, I'm telling you, man, like, we're here. I made it here this morning. Didn't think I would. But he said, all you had to do is trust in me. I learned a lot of lessons this last week. This last week is really the base of this message right here. Because I've always said trust him, but then when you hit that point where you truly have to trust him and he doesn't fail you, what do I have to be scared of? What do I have to be scared of? This morning, what do you have to be scared of? You're on a journey. You're breathing, you're on a journey. Let God get you through that journey. If I get everybody to stand up, I'll have the prayer team come up as well. If I get everybody to bow your heads real fast, I'm going to ask you this question. This morning, do you have a relationship with God? Do you have a relationship with the one who makes a promise, who gives you purpose, and who can get you through that journey? Maybe as I'm asking that question, maybe you say, no, I really don't have that relationship. And if that's you, that's fine. But I wanna ask you to start that relationship with Jesus today. To allow him to be your Prince of Peace. To allow him to be in your life so you can get through the journey of life. So this morning, if that's you, if you say, look, I want to give my life to Christ, I'm going to ask you to boldly raise your hand. I'm not going to call you out. But if you'll just raise your hand, I just simply want to pray with you. If you raise your hand, I'm going to ask you to pray this with me. You can put your hands down. Say, God, today I choose to give my life to you. Father, I want to start my relationship with you this morning. I thank you for sending your son to die on the cross for me, and I ask that you'll forgive me for my sins. Father, I also ask that you'll guide me into this relationship as this relationship is new. God, direct me to your plans and your purpose. In your holy name, amen. So we have a prayer team up here that would love to pray with you. Whatever the needs are in your life, whatever you're going through, I just want to challenge you to step forward and pray. It's not anything special about us as the people up here at the prayer team. It's about the fact that we're lifting you up to the one who can make the difference. So if you have something you want to pray about, if you have something you're going through, as we go back into worship, I want to ask you to step forward and let's pray together. Let's lift these things up to the one who can get you through this journey of life, that can lead you to that promise. Let's take this time to worship together.